This is the starting position of the Rossolimo Sicilian. It's an opening named after Nicolas Rossolimo. He was a grandmaster who was born in the Russian Empire in 1910, who moved to the US in 1952, and who became a grandmaster a year later. He had participated in the 1975 World Open, where he finished in third place. Unfortunately, just as he had finished this tournament, he fell down a flight of stairs and died as a result of the head injuries he sustained. The Rossolimo is characterized by the moves e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. One thing I can say from the beginning is that this is a difficult and vast opening. Thus, we will limit our analysis to the main line involving 3g6. And we will focus on ideas, and with one exception, we will avoid looking at full games. My goal is to make a video which will allow you to get started playing this opening. Despite the fact that learning the Rossolimo takes time, once it is learned, it will be massively beneficial. There's a reason the best players, including Magnus Carlsen and Fabiano Caruana, play this opening. It's because it's effective. And it's also an opening worth learning because it avoids the super theoretical and super time-consuming Sveshnikov Sicilian. So the Sveshnikov involves the moves e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, d5, knight b5, knight db5 rather, d6, bishop g5, a6, knight a3, b5. So this is the Sicilian Sveshnikov. Now let's go back to the Sicilian Rossolimo. e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. Here black has four main responses. By far the most popular one, and the one we will be covering in this video, is g6. It is a move that is twice as popular as the second most popular move, which is e6. Funnily enough, e6 is twice as popular as the third most popular move, d6. And we can continue with this pattern for the fourth most popular move in this position, which is knight f6. So we'll be looking at g6. Here white will play bishop takes c6. This is the main line and involves taking on c6 immediately. Black has two ways of recapturing. By far the most popular way to recapture is d takes c6. b takes c6 is a subject for another video. So d takes c6, d3. If we go back one move, instead of d3, white can also play h3. But this move basically transposes into the same position after bishop g7, d3, knight f6. So we're going to be looking at 5, d3. And here black will play bishop g7. If we go back one move here, bishop g4 is also possible here, but it's not a very ambitious attempt. If black wants to give up his bishop pair, he can. It won't mean that white will have an easy game, but it will give him a small advantage at no cost. So we will mostly see bishop g7 in this position. White will play h3, and this is really a multi-purpose move. Sure, it does stop bishop g4, which we don't really care if black plays, but another reason for it is that it stops the knight from coming to this square. So the knight will almost always come to f6, and then the knight will be able to play knight g4 in one move. Since our plan is typically to put the bishop on e3, this knight on g4 will be able to harass that bishop. So in this position, like I said, knight f6 is going to be played. Another possibility here is b6. This is a flexible move. Black does not commit to any particular setup. It's a solid line which has been used by Kramnik. White can continue with knight c3 or castle short. So knight f6 is the more popular reply. White will play knight c3, castle short. If we go back one move, here black can also play knight d7. This is an idea worth exploring. It was played against Magnus Carlsen by Jukic in 2007. It's also an idea that has been tried by Kasparov, Nakamura, Kramnik, among other super grandmasters. The black knight is obviously not going to stay on d7. It will make its way to e6 via f8. Usually it's going to make its way there after some preparatory moves are played. For example, f6 and e5. Let's see how this idea is demonstrated in a game. So bishop e3 attacking the c5 pawn, e5, queen d2, queen e7. So because the knight is going to be moving away from this square and thus away from the defensive c5, the black queen is adding a piece to defend the c5 pawn. Bishop h6, white is trying to get rid of black's bishop pair. f6. With f6, this move does protect the e5 pawn. It also allows the queen to defend g7. The queen no longer needs to defend c5 because white's bishop has been moved away from e3. Bishop takes g7, queen takes g7, a3. This move involves an interesting idea, which we will discuss in the main line. Right now, let's see how the game continued. Knight f8, b4, knight e6. This is a nice square for the knight here on e6 because it is difficult for white to attack it with any of his pieces. This is a pretty even position, but Carlsen did go on to win it. Another characteristic of this position is that we see that white has played a3 and b4, but like I said, we'll look at that idea in the main line. Let's go back to 7, castle short by black. Here white will play bishop e3, and black will have two ways of defending the c5 pawn. The most popular is b6. Another attempt is knight d7, often with the idea of bringing the knight to e6. So we'll be looking at b6, b6, queen d2, and again white wants to trade the dark squared bishop to get rid of black's bishop pair. Here there's a couple of different ideas that black has. We'll look at 3 different ones. The main one we'll be looking at is e5, but in addition to e5, black can play knight e8. It's another idea that grandmasters have played. Essentially, it's just another way for black to get his knight to e6, this time via c7 instead of in the previous example we've seen via f8. So let's see how play might continue. Castle long, knight c7, bishop h6, knight e6. The position is not great for black here. Nothing is stopping white from opening up the h file, and the black king doesn't look too safe. h4, bishop takes h6, queen takes h6, f6, knight e2, rook f7, g4, knight d4, knight f takes d4, c takes d5, rook dg1, c5, g5, queen f8, h5, queen takes h6, g takes h6, g5, f4, king h8, f takes g5, f takes g5, rook takes g5, rook f6. So this is from a game, a 1991 game between Bolgan and Karlov. White won the game after he played b4 in this position, which is kind of an interesting move, because if black takes, which he did in this game, white will take on d4 and black will be left with doubled pawns. So let's go back. So that was the knight e8 idea. We saw that white castled long and launched a pawn storm against the black king. The other idea is rook e8. White will play bishop h6. However, the a3 idea is another possibility, and we'll talk more about that idea shortly. So rook e8, bishop h6. Now, because the black rook moved to e8, black can keep the bishop pair, at least for now, by playing bishop h8. And here, white has an interesting idea, the move e5. Now, this move deserves a full explanation. So the knight is being forced away from the defense of the black king, and a path is opening up for the c3 knight. However, this move does involve sacrificing the e5 pawn. In return, black's bishop pair will be gone, because the dark square bishop will have to do the taking of the e5 pawn. Let's see an example. So after e5, black will play knight d5, knight e4, knight c7, castle long, knight e6, c3 stopping knight d4, queen c7 putting more pressure on the e5 pawn, h4. So the idea here is to take on g6 with this h pawn and weaken black's king's defenses by opening up the h file. Bishop takes e5, knight takes e5, queen takes e5, h5, bishop a6, attacking the weak d4 pawn, d3 pawn. H takes g6, h takes g6, f4, queen d5, c4, queen d4, g4, rook a d8, f5, queen takes e4, d takes e4, rook takes d2, rook takes d2, knight d4, rook dh2. Here black resigned. This was a 2004 game between Otechkin and Kuzubov. So that was the rook e8 idea. The main move we'll be looking at here is e5 by black. The black pawn on e5 is indirectly defended. If white takes the pawn, knight takes e5, knight takes e4, we see that the bishop attacks the knight. Knight takes c6, knight takes d2, knight takes d8, knight c4, d takes c4, rook takes d8. So black has a slight advantage due to a well-placed bishop, a rook on the open file. White's pawn structure has been weakened. Okay, sure, this game is playable, but what we have done by taking on e5 was to open up the position in which black has the bishop pair. So let's go back. Another attempt is that white can try here is bishop h6. And let's see how that might go. So queen d6, castle long, a5, bishop takes g7, king takes g7, knight h2, moving the knight out of the way to prepare f4, a4, knight e2, securing the f4 move, b5, knight g4, knight g8, f4, e takes f4, knight takes f4, bishop takes g4, h takes g4, queen e5, queen e3, a3. And I'll leave it here. The game ended in a draw, but black doesn't look too bad here, and it actually appears that he's getting to the white king first. So let's go back. So here there's a more effective idea, and if we look at this position, we'll see that white's position is very flexible. He can go king side or queen side. The move that I would recommend here is a3. It looks kind of passive, but there's actually a pretty decent idea behind it. We want to play b4. If black takes with the c pawn, it does undouble his pawns. However, it does a couple of other things. First, it takes it takes away one of his central pawns. That c5 pawn controls d5. It also opens up the a file for our rooks, and often the a7 pawn will be weak. And of course, after the trade, if black does trade, we would be giving up our a pawn for black c pawn, which is an advantage to us. So we'll be looking at a specific example where white sacrifices his b pawn in order to create two open files. So queen d6, this move stops the intended b4 move. Castle short, bishop e6, b4. So this is the pawn sacrifice I had just mentioned. And this was played in a game between Christensen and Gwen Van Hui in 2008. C takes b4, a takes b4, queen takes b4. Here white played rook a4. Rook a6 is the better attempt here, with the idea of doubling up on the a file. If black plays bishop c8, then we can at that point play rook a4, and then by doing it in this manner we're requiring black to move his bishop back to its starting square. But rook a4 was played, and black played queen e7, which is an inaccuracy. Here white played rook fa1. The better move would have been to play knight takes e5. Black would have played bishop takes h3. The queen is attacking the knight. Knight takes c6, queen b7, and knight d5. This leaves white with a comfortable advantage. If black takes on c6, he loses his queen to knight e5, checking the king and forking the queen. So if we go back, white ended up playing rook fa1, and white did go on to win this game, but if he had played knight takes e5, he would have won more easily. So I hope this video was helpful in understanding the Rossolimo a little better. If it was, make sure to hit the like button, to subscribe, and to share the video. Thanks for watching.